people process service, which thank goodness I trademarked it years and years ago, was all about how we do create the business, but then it became a part of the life thing. And so as we talk about it, we started living the dream of running the business like that. And then we incorporated that into our meetings. And when there would be a problem with, let's say, a performance issue with someone, we would actually take the people process service and look at it to diagnose the patient. Why are we having issues?
Hello, my fellow humans, and welcome to the Multiverse Technology Podcast. Today's guest is Bill, President and CEO of Frontline Source Group, a nationwide staffing and recruitment firm, and contributor to the Dallas Federal Reserve's Beige Book Committee for over 17 years. Bill, welcome to the podcast today.
Thanks, Justin. I appreciate it. Excited to be here. Appreciate it very much.
Hell yeah, glad to have you. You could take our audience on a little bit about your journey, how you started, where you came from, and then to what you're doing now and how you're helping people.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's a journey that could take hours probably to talk about.
I got all day. Let's go.
Man, it's a journey. So I started a company called Frontline Source Group. We're a professional staffing and executive search firm. We're headquartered in Dallas, Texas. Got about 32 locations, I guess, across the country now, but we cover all over the country, placing, professionals with companies, an employment agency, some people call it. But 21 years ago, I started it as an IT staffing agency. And that's what I was. I was an IT guy. I'd worked for the Fortune 500 companies and wanted to do something different, and had an epiphany and said, I can do this better. And so I was going to start this company, and we were only going to be placing, and if you're an IT person, you'll understand this, but if you're not, let's just go with, you're going to place high-level consulting, SAP, ERP system type consultants, high dollar. 21, 22 years ago, man, that was cake, man. It was going to be awesome. And that's where it started. And the funny part of the whole story is that 21, 22 years later, we've never placed one of those individuals because it never went that way. And so started with the idea that I was watching, I'm a big Seinfeld fan. I was watching a Seinfeld episode, and it was the George Costanza, they call it the Costanza Theory show. And the whole premise is that George comes around saying everything he does the opposite of everybody else does, it works out for him, and they're in the diner, and this attractive person, I think it looks at him, and they're like, hey, why don't you go over and talk to her? And he's like, she would never talk to me. And they said, well, if the theory is true, she will. And he walks over and says, hi, my name is George. I'm balding. I'm 40. I'm unemployed, and I live with my parents. And she kicks the chair back and says, you want to have a seat? And that idea was what I started the company with. And the idea behind it was to say, agency, employment agency, staffing agency, consultants, they placed people 40, 50 at a time, like cattle. They just herded them into something and then put them to the arena. And I said, instead, let's do it the opposite. Let's do it one at a time. Let's not look at, going after hiring 50 people at a time, 100 people at a time. Let's do this different. Let's treat people different. Let's come at this a whole different way. Let's look at it as a different way to understand a local market and to grow and to do this journey that's different from everyone else. And that's where the idea came. And that's literally how I started it. But I never ended up placing the ERP, SAP people, because instead these companies said, hey, we need an accounting person. And I was an IT guy. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. I don't know what the hell that is. And so I had to go figure it out. But it opened up a door. And I think that's the whole thing, is that the journey has been about opening doors, and you relate it back to people. And from there, it started building on so many different just vines of a tree, and the way it would grow, to understand what is it like to build a business, and where do you start and what part. And then I started with one idea, but it really wasn't going to be the idea. Instead, it kind of funneled, and then you went down this path and that path. And it's been, there's a million different ways to take this conversation, but that's kind of where it started, from the idea and the premise.
That's amazing. I love how it's kind of like your business spoke to you. You started to do the ERP, then IT, but then you didn't, but then realized that no one was asking for those. So if you would have gone down
Right.
that way, you could have had a dead end and no business.
We would have been out of business.
Yeah.
We would have been, I mean, I had a family to take care of and everything else. I didn't have time for that.
Yeah.
I had to figure out where did I need to hunt to try to figure out what the need was, and then to understand the marketplace was to understand what the client was asking for. And 21, 22 years ago, they wanted the relationship. And that was the core of building the business anyway, was about building relationships with people. And so we started building relationships, or I started it one at a time. But I was the recruiter, the salesperson, the HR, the accounting, the web development guy. I mean, I was doing all of this stuff at the same time. Luckily, I mean, I was a lot younger and had hair. So, I mean, it worked, right? But you learn how to adapt and how to understand what the client need was. Well, that's beautiful, because as it started to grow and I started to expand, we started hiring people. You're able to delegate, you're able to give things to help people, to help you grow, but you're listening, which created really the three pillars for us, which were the real foundation of the company, which was to understand that building a business was, we had to have this process. We had to have a way to operate, which, as you said, it was kind of like learning. We'd gone on that path, we would have been out of business. So we had to listen to what the client need was, which took us one avenue, right? And then you really had to understand you had to have the right people. So as you're growing a business, starting to expand, you had to hire people, and wow, who do you trust, right? And then you hire, and I'm supposed to be this great recruiter, but I'm hiring people and firing them just as quick, right? It's like I couldn't figure out what I needed. And then somehow I needed to ask my clients, geez, what do you need, right? So you're going through the same pain that they go through, and you're learning all these parts of what it is. And then it's like that service level, that service that you're giving back. And I don't know, that was the epiphany, I think, for me, was that when I recognized that building a business and life and the way that we go through life, those three things kind of correlate. That, we have this, we surround ourselves with the right people in our lives, but we do that when we build a business. We have a process that we live our life around, the way that just how we live our life, or if we have a family or kids or whatever it is, there's some type of process. Well, you have that same thing in a business. And then there's the service that we give in a business and the service level that's expected. And in real life, we have a service level too. We have a service level of what we do for the community or for our family or our church or whatever it may be. There's something that all correlates. There was just a time that it just snapped, and all of a sudden we realized, man, these two are exactly the same. When one of them is out of kilter, your life isn't right. And so it was about, how do I do this? How do you balance? And as the 21, 22 years have gone by now, every time there's been a hiccup, every time we've had something that's challenged us, we're able to look at one of those three and identify that some part within those three, there's a problem. And sometimes we've had it where there have been two issues, like it's the people and it's the process. And it's like, oh crap, we got to burn everything down. We got to start over. But you think about it, and I'm blessed. I've been married for I'm hoping to make it to 32 years, pretty close. You go through those ups and downs of where you have something that works or doesn't work. And when you think about people that go through like a divorce, that's kind of that the people maybe you surrounded yourself with that help you get through that, or maybe it was something that caused it, that it was part of that process of the way you were living. You've got to change. But it's so interesting that starting a business actually ended up creating a whole nother kind of look at life and the way that we do things. And reflecting back, it's been just inspirational, because it hasn't just been the IT side. Now we're into, like 28 different verticals of these different groups and niches and areas. And I mean, we place grocery store managers. I mean, I never in a million years thought there would be even a need for that. But that was part of that understanding and realizing, listening to the client, listening to what their need was, to see, can we make a difference? And if we can't make a difference, understanding that you have to walk away. You have to be honest. You have to say, that's not what we do. That's just been the challenging part, I think, because unfortunately people aren't always honest about it, and they want to be, but everybody's out for an agenda. And what we've tried to do is to always insist on, we're not going to be that way. And even when we've gone down that path and people have said, well, you guys didn't do, we're like, we told you in the beginning. I mean, we're so upfront about it. But, it's the challenge of dealing with humans too. but they're always difficult.
Yeah, so much to unpack there and such valuable and vital information. Especially how you reflected back on building the business and your own life. Because when I started my business, I learned that same thing. I started seeing as I built systems here, and I built those in my life, things just seemed to work a lot better, and things clicked, and I got it. So I'm like, why isn't everyone doing this? But when people look at business, they're like, oh, business system. You keep business, professional, and personal separate. I think that's a load of crap. They need to come together. They're
Yeah.
one and the same, especially when you're doing this for 20 years and it's been part of your personal life and your business life, and you've learned how to treat people that way. That's the core
Right.
important
Right.
thing there. I'd like to know more about those 3 pillars that you were talking about earlier too. How you guys
Yeah.
implemented
Yeah.
those.
Yeah, the three pillars are really interesting, and going back to the life and business piece of it. If you're a true entrepreneur, I mean a true one, not one that stumbles and becomes the billionaire. I'm talking about you have been through the ups and downs. You go through, and a true entrepreneur that's listening understands this, right? They have had feast and they have had famine, and they understand that you don't take the good times for granted. You take that as a blessing because you know something is coming. And at some point, it doesn't matter what type of, and this happened with COVID. We were all challenged. The bottom was pulled out from underneath us.
Yeah.
You had to adapt and you had to learn. Part of that is that a true entrepreneur, you work 20-hour days, 22-hour days sometimes, 24 hours a
9
day
days a
sometimes you
week.
have to. Yeah, exactly. Right. And your family is part of that process, or whoever is around you, because you have to have that encouragement. And if you are a true entrepreneur, you understand that you are so deep in this that even if it failed, you would never admit that it failed. And that is why you never quit, right? You are continuously looking at how do you improve. And those three pillars, the people, process, service, which thank goodness I trademarked it years and years ago, was all about how how we do create the business, but then it became a part of the life thing. And so as we talk about it, we started living the dream of running the business like that. And then we incorporated that into our meetings to understand those three pillars. And when there would be a problem with, let's say, a performance issue with someone, we would actually take the people, process, service and look at it to diagnose like the patient. Why are we having issues? Is it something to do with the person? They're great. They have an attitude. It's wonderful. They're working their butt off. They're doing blah blah blah. Everything's fantastic. Okay, are they the service, the level of what they're providing to our clients? Are they interacting? Are they speaking with people? Are they communicating? Yeah, that's fantastic. What's their process? Well, it looks like they're not doing enough interviews, or they're really short. Maybe they're not getting enough info. There's the problem every time, because those three narrowed it down. We didn't need a spreadsheet of qualifying and quantifying information to break through each one of these to try to find that needle in a haystack. All we needed to do was really just drill into three parts and then understand from those three parts where's the issue, and then go and attack it. And that has been so interesting because no matter the conversation that like you have when you're doing your podcast with people, when you think about it, you're asking those three things just in a different manner.
Really?
You're talking to them about how did you create your business? Well, that's kind of the process, right? So then you're talking to them about, oh, tell me about your staff and how did you grow your business? That's your people. And then you talk about, well, what do you guys do? Well, that's your service.
So true.
So it's like you're at a different level, and when you bring it up to the top and you break it down into those pillars, it doesn't become so difficult to understand where the breakdown is happening and taking place. And then it's the same thing with your life. When you're not happy with what's going on, you look at that and all of a sudden you're like, well, I shouldn't be hanging out with these people, or maybe I need new friends, right?
Yeah.
I had someone tell me one time,
Uh-huh.
they were like, every 5 years I get new friends. And I thought, man, I'm getting old. I don't know that I have 5 people anymore that I actually even like hanging out with that much, right?
Yeah.
But you do end up with a smaller group of people that become true
So
friends.
true.
And so it all correlates back together. But I will tell you, time and time again, when there's been an issue, those three come into line. And after we went through COVID and, being in the employment business and putting people to work, first thing that dropped out was all of these jobs were gone. And we're like, well, what do we do? And I said, guys, we go figure something out. And what happened? We got a phone call. And the phone call was, hey, we need people to stand in parking lots and swab noses. Okay. This is when we were still calling it Corona. I mean, we didn't even know what it was.
Mm-mm.
And my conversation with that went, okay, we're in. We'll figure it out, because that's what we had to do. We had to figure out how we're going to get to the next step. Well, that was business. We had to take care of our families. So that came into play also. Everybody was trying to figure out, how are we going to survive? What do we need to do? How are we going to get through this? It was so relevant to the people process service that when I look back at it, I think it was amazing that we actually had the guidance to understand that that's what we needed to.
Hey, my fellow humans, sorry to interrupt your video, but if you're looking for more ways to protect and empower your healthcare practice, we would love to help. At ITCMD, our mission is to simplify IT, boost security, and support your compliance journey with a human touch, so you can focus on caring for your patients. Want to see how easy IT and cybersecurity can be? Schedule a free consult or check out our resources at iteecmd.net. Let's build a safer, stronger future together. Okay, bye. Oh, I love that. It's such a powerful way of looking at things, especially like from the family point of view. Because if people have this in their families and see systems in place, these 2 pillars, the families would run more smoothly instead of all the chaos, And people
Yeah,
just
yeah.
don't seem to understand that both of these are so good going both ways, business and personal. Really just help, really fine tune to live better lives. But people don't want to think
Well,
about
it
it that way.
actually helps to build structure, right? So this is going to make me sound really like I'm an old dude when I talk
Back
about
in my
this, right?
time.
But yeah, exactly, right? Listen, family needs structure.
Yes.
The one thing that we're missing in this country today is structure
Yes.
when it comes to family unit and family value, period. I think it's going to be difficult for any political view to argue that, because the reality is, and I actually think it's getting better because of new generations that either haven't had it or they want it also. But we went through a period where we didn't have that. And so that structure in family is no different than having structure in life. Maybe that came about because of COVID. Maybe that came about because being locked in a place and not being able to go out and do things, you had to have some structure so you didn't go crazy, knowing that you couldn't go to the grocery store and buy
Some of
whatever
us
you want,
still
couldn't
went
go buy a new
crazy, let me
car.
tell you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you had to have a certain amount of structure to understand.
Yeah.
You had to change the way you lived your life. And so structure is good when you are able to adapt and use it in the right manner. And that really is what people process service does, is build structure. It built structure for a company, it built structure for a family, it built structure for your life.
That's so beautiful. I'm gonna have to really keep that one in mind for myself too as I go about building my business and family. And if we were talking earlier about taking the family on the journey as you're building your business, it is kind of true because when you're an entrepreneur, I feel if you're doing it the right way and you're supposed to bring your family with you. And in doing that, you have to make sure you both are on the same page and they have to realize, hey, I'm building this business. I'm doing this. I want to bring you with me. Because a lot of people, they leave their family behind and their families suffer because of that. And they don't have those conversations with them on this journey they're supposed to be on together. And all that, the family would just kind of fall apart. People would cheat. People would get angry, miserable, resentment. And people think it can't be done.
Yeah. And as I said, I'm very lucky, right? But I also have, 2 grown kids now that are, almost 30 and 28. And so if you think 20 years ago, they were 8 and 10. And so those are prime years. And what I dedicated myself to was to make sure I was always available, but also to make sure that they uh, understood from a work ethic standpoint what I was doing. So they grew up with, I almost call it like being embedded with the DNA of it, right? Because they saw what I was having to do. It wasn't that I was disconnected. It was that they could see that my work and what I had to do to be successful in the time that was put in. So multiple family vacations where we would be on vacation I would still have to work in the morning. I'd still have to work in the afternoon. I would have to work at night. But if I shut down for a few hours to do things with them, they knew I was going to be up at night when they went to bed. Those were things that it made me feel guilty about years later. And those conversations I've had with both of our kids is to say, I'm sorry. Recently, not recently, in the last few years, had this conversation, and both said, we don't know what you're talking about because we have no regrets. There was never a time when we ever felt like you neglected. In fact, we felt bad that we were young, couldn't help you. We
Wow.
saw what you did. We have, and that has instilled in them now as professionals in their lives because they have work ethic and see that, and they come back and they'll be bitching and moaning to me about, man, I got these losers I work with. They like show up late, leave early, where it was always instilled, you show up early, and you're going to be the last one out the door. You're never going to be the first one out. You're going to be the last one out the door. You're going to be the first one in. And that's just part of who they are. And so I look at it today and think it's not a bad thing. You can have a work-life balance. You just have to make an effort at it. Got to have a process.
I love that, because I always thought you had to have a conversation with your family, but usually it proved the opposite, where they saw what you were doing and you were still showing up for them, and that placed in them to understand what you were doing. Even though you felt guilty, they're like, "Dad, it's
Right.
okay." That's like the most
Yeah.
amazing thing you
Well, I
could
mean,
hear.
you still had to have a conversation with your significant other,
Yes.
right? Because you can't undertake something like that and not have your significant other on board. Like you have to have the conversation to say, there are going to be times when we're going to be really lucky with and flush with wealth, whatever you want to call wealth. I think now I look back and I think about wealth differently than I did younger. Wealth doesn't necessarily mean money. So, but when you start, that's what I made a mistake one time. I'm going to tell, I haven't told this story in years. I made a mistake one time. And it was my wife's birthday. We were in Vegas and we were having dinner, and it was a really, really nice, expensive restaurant. And boy, it was a fantastic year. And I sat there and I said this, and I'm going to tell you, I've never said it again publicly like this, or in a way that was like from my heart. And I looked at her and I said, "We're rich." And do you know, I regret it to this day of ever saying that,
What?
because it wasn't about the wealth. It wasn't. That was the wrong thing to be focusing on, because within 18 months, the bottom dropped out of everything, and it was like, boom, we're back down to like gone, and you got to rebuild again.
So
And
powerful.
that was something that I took for granted that I learned from. And that's what being an entrepreneur is. You learn from those mistakes. I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs I've met and known over the years who haven't made it to that pivotal level, right? I haven't. Gentleman that I like to call I like to call him a good friend, and I really probably can't, but his name is Dr. Michael Gorton. And this guy is a very famous individual, entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, serial, 100 times probably. But his biggest claim is that he's climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, and he comes up with an idea to create this little company. And it's funny, I said his name and my Siri just kicked in, giving me ideas. He comes up with this idea, climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, to create a company called Teladoc. Now, Teladoc is live and running literally when COVID hits. And guess what we all need? We need a way to be able to get to a doctor through our. You want to talk about an entrepreneur who hit it perfect?
Damn.
And I've talked to him so many. I mean, he's in the Texas Entrepreneur Hall of Fame. This guy is amazing, but he's also had stuff fail. And every time what he told me was, I've learned from that. I've learned from something that's made me better the next time to do something different. Now, I haven't gone on to create multiples. Instead, I've stuck with the same thing, but we've had the ups and downs. We've had all those ups and downs. And every time you learn from that, and it makes that your skin's thick. You take it on. You're here to the end. I'm not going out until you take me all the way down to the ground. I don't give up. Take no prisoners. Whatever you want to say. But it all focuses back to those core things.
Oh, man, I love that. I've learned that entrepreneurship is not for everyone. Everyone shouldn't be doing it. You have to be very risk adverse. Like for me, for the longest time, I didn't understand that. I didn't get it. But I started learning and understanding more about the failures and the journey and the frustrations that come with it. And in a way, it kind of was like seasoning me a little bit more, so I can be prepared when these things do happen. Because what's the alternative? Being miserable and unhappy? Wealth. I believe wealth is not just money, but the family you
Right.
have, the legacy you
Yeah.
built, the people you're going to spend the most time with. And I'm learning that at a younger part of my journey, fortunately.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it too, because as you're going through this, look, you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
I may have made so many mistakes, it's not even funny. And I've never been the one to say I do not. First of all, I do not know it all. I am absolutely not perfect, but you learn. And I'm a better man today because I've been learning on this journey along the way. Am I sorry for mistakes I've made? Absolutely. Am I sorry about even the way I've treated? Absolutely. It's That's part of it. But part of that success comes from admitting you've made mistakes, doing the best you can to do the right thing at the end of the day, being humble when it comes about it to understand that. And then, like I said, recognizing that what I have could be gone tomorrow. So don't take that for granted. And especially when it comes to helping other people. About a year ago, our daughter came to me and said she really wanted to leave the corporate world and start her own business. And I
Mhm.
said, oof, I don't know that I can recommend that to you. I mean, you're our daughter. I don't know that I can do that. She said, Dad, this is what I want to do. And 2 months ago, she left the corporate world and started her own business. And nothing makes me more proud than to know that that's what she's decided to
Started
do.
her
And
journey.
she's going through the journey and the struggle. And as a dad, I have to step back and
That's
I
hard.
can advise, but I can't discipline. And so that has to be where she's got to learn it. So, yeah, you go through all those ups and downs, but you're right. It's not about the wealth. And in the beginning, it's funny because it does correlate back to another thing, which is in the beginning, and especially when you're in different industries and you have, associations or groups, you're always judged based on, like, let's take the Inc. 500. It's all about revenue, right? It's all about how much revenue are you billing out? How much money is it? When the reality of it is, I know I caught onto that about 5 years into it. After we had won Inc. 500 and been listed in 5,000 multiple years in a row, I was having a lunch with our CPA, and he said, "Look, congratulations, that's fantastic." He goes, "But do you really understand what's important?" And I kind of looked at him, and I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "It's the bottom line. But there's not a award for that that's given out publicly. Bottom line is what matters to you. Are you making money, or you just keep putting it back into the business, and that's not what it's all about." And I think that was like an epiphany moment where all of a sudden I was like, crap, we've been looking at the wrong thing, right? It's like, I don't need to measure myself against anybody else. And when you take that out, that ego out,
A hell of a
and you
drug.
start pulling it, man, you start, all of a sudden reality kicks in, and then your priorities change. And then what happens? Well, guess what? Those three pillars, those change too, because you just changed everything. So now you got to go back to evaluate your service. Well, we got to change our service because I get my bottom line up. Bottom line's important. I got to look at the people, who's producing, who's costing me too much. I mean, every bit of those, the process, the way we do things, we need to cut this out, be more efficient. That actually makes you better at the end of the day, and quit worrying about being on that list about how much you're billing people. That doesn't mean anything. Maybe everybody on that list is overcharging. I should create a different one. And so you start looking at it, which then goes all the way back to the Costanza theory, which is do the opposite of what everybody else. And then all of a sudden it hits you and you're like, it was right there in front of me the whole time.
Oh, I love that because it is really hard. Yeah, it's really hard sometimes when you see everyone doing things one way and they're all enjoying this, and you feel like you got to step on that boat bandwagon as well and hop on that and do the same thing. But in reality, the way you think and do things are so different. It's been kind of doing yourself a disservice.
Well, start studying serial entrepreneurs. I mean, start looking at and thinking about individuals and I look at it in like a Elon Musk. That guy's a serial entrepreneur. I don't
Yeah.
care what anybody says about him. He is. I just story. He's making his bottom line. He's worried about the top just to appease, but his bottom line is what he's worried about. I look at a Mark Cuban. That is a serial entrepreneur, right? I mean, that's what he looks at. He looks at how a company functions, how it goes through. You look at all of that to the bottom line. That's what I started doing was to read books about interesting information on people, understand what have they done, the journeys, and to figure it out. And that's you figure out your own way also at the end of the day, I guess.
That is very true. And it can be a rough journey sometimes, especially as you're starting out. But like you were saying earlier with your daughter, that you were to advise, not discipline. I feel that like a lot of people nowadays, there's so much information out here. There's so many coaches and people that you can work with and get advice from. A lot of those mistakes and things that a lot of us go through or going through can be minimized. But you have to, like you said, start reading books on like Mark Cuban and Elon. Just reading those books to really understand what's going through their minds and how you can minimize those downfalls. They're gonna be there, but just about minimization is very key there.
That's right. That's right.
And I learned that myself early in my journey. I was like, oh, I gotta do this, or I gotta do that. And I didn't know how to be myself. I didn't know what I brought to the table. I didn't realize I was in front of me the whole time, but I wasn't seeing me for who I was, only for who I thought I needed to be for other people. And that was a very
Yeah,
hard.
and I think that's the scary part, right, with AI right now, is
Um,
that AI is the shiny, purple squirrel that's running across, and we're all following it to figure out what's going to be the new fast thing we need to see, and then you have to worry about, is it going to take away that us? Is it going to take away that fear factor about, you know, what we bring to the table from an emotional standpoint, mental standpoint, relationship standpoint? How does that change in the business function? But then how's that going to translate into our lives? I mean, those are the unknowns of technology. And I tell a story all the time that, 45 years ago, being at home, and our father brought home the first microwave. And, it took four of us to carry it in the house. It was so big, right? And it was going to do away with all the jobs for all the chefs and cooks, and they weren't going to be around anymore. And 45 years later, Denny's has a lot of microwaves, but we still have chefs and cooks, and it's just part of our life. And so everything about what that journey is that you go through the change and you figure out how to adapt.
so true. You have to learn to pivot, have to learn to move, and I've learned the key to it too is the pace you do it at. It starts off slow, but the faster you adapt, the faster you move, the better you're better off you are. But it takes time. It takes learning how to do that. I started at first, I was like, oh, if I'm not doing this right, oh, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Oh, I'm not good for this. But I wasn't giving myself the time to really go through it, to really take it.
Well, and you're your biggest critic, right?
Yeah, we are. Oh, 100%.
So, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. It's been a hard lesson, but also I'm learning having conversations with guys like yourself and starting my podcast. It really helped me understand because I've learned so much from you today. We put things in perspective and taking little nuggets from these things. And I'm gonna also use the people, process, and service, and kind of do everything I do against that and see if it works.
yeah. It's that analogy of throwing the wet napkin against the wall and seeing if it sticks.
Yeah,
It's really interesting when you start drilling down into it how it correlates.
yeah, because I feel like I don't have enough systems in place for certain things, but I'm still on my journey learning how to put them in. And it just kind of takes time, like you said, throwing the napkin and just figuring it out. It might not work for me.
Yeah,
It might not work. I'm
yeah.
like, well,
No,
I tried it. We'll keep trying stuff.
the interesting part is that it will work for you if you change your process, because it's not working for you because you're not looking at changing and
Old
and thinking
processes.
about. Yeah. And so then when you all of a sudden look at your way you're doing things, you go, holy crap, it does work. It does.
Um,
If I put these into these silos, I recognize that's where my problem is, because sometimes we don't we oversimplify, but in many ways we take something. It's that analogy, you go down the rabbit hole. It's like, I didn't have to go that far. Like, I don't have to cut the noise out and figure out where that problem is, and then you recognize. And for some people, it's, again, it goes back to, is it just the way you're doing things? Is it what you're doing, or the people around you, what you're involved in? It can be so many different parts of it that fall into that people side. From, it could be faith, it could be just the way you're living your life. It could be things that you're doing that aren't good for
You
you,
don't let
that you need to
go of
cut out.
things easily.
That's just
Not
it.
soon.
Because we're human, but we're human, and we're put here to make mistakes. And so our job is to figure out how to alleviate and make it better, so that we can leave this place in a better place than it was when we got here.
Very well said. I love that. Damn, Bill, I thank you so much for coming on here today. We
No, very kind of you,
appreciate you.
Justin.
Love to
Appreciate it.
have you back
Yeah,
as well.
appreciate it very much.
I do
Anytime,
want to ask you
anytime,
one
bro.
last question, actually goes with what
Sure.
you just said. And that is, what does it mean to you to be a human being?
It's almost overpowering, but I think it goes back to what I just said at the end. I mean, I feel like I need to leave this place just a little bit better. I feel like if everybody just every day, just did one thing that was good, that when you put your head down to go to sleep at night, you knew you made one difference in your day. What a difference that would make when you compound that by billions. There's so much negative and hate and uh, just there's so much of that. And I think that as humans, there's not a right answer. We're going to argue about things. We're going to have disagreements. We're never going to agree 100%.
No.
And so, okay, let's just cross that bridge. We're going to be like that. We're going to have, this is the way it's going to be. So instead of worrying about everybody else, just do one thing every day that you can close your eyes and go to sleep and know you did something that helped someone or made a difference or made a plus. Put one plus over there, one check mark in the plus aisle every day. It doesn't have to be huge. Hold the door for someone. It can be that simple. I mean, I don't understand that.
Chivalry's
I don't
not.
understand why that is such a stupid thing that I don't understand just common courtesy of people. And I know that's really minute when you think about it, but it's
It's
not.
simple.
If we had to hold a door open day for everybody and everybody did that, everybody would freak out. Because even today, when you do that for someone, I mean, we take it for granted. And some people don't, and people have bad days. And sometimes it's just somebody just smiling can be, and not a sarcastic, yeah, just a real smile. Sometimes people just need that. You don't know what's going on in their life. Just do something positive. And I think that's why the employment business to me, when I first got into it, was such a big game changer that people actually said thank you. We don't hear thank you as much for what we do anymore. It's pretty rare. I mean, we find people new careers that are going to make them a lot of money, take care of their families, and are good opportunities, and we don't hear that. Instead, what we hear, sometimes we never hear from them again, even. Something goes wrong, and now they're calling begging, and you're like, wow, I mean, you don't have to be like that. We don't have to be like that. Be kind.
I love that. And I always tell people how much I appreciate them and thank them very much.
Yeah,
I like the door analogies. I do that a lot. Sometimes people are like, why the hell are you
I do
doing
too.
that? I'm like, why?
I
You're
know.
asking the
I know.
wrong question. Why wouldn't I
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah. I'm just, okay, so I just kept my hand on it for an extra 5 seconds.
Oh my goodness.
What's the big deal?
Right?
I mean, I don't care. I don't care who's coming through the door. A male, a female. I don't care. Doesn't make a difference.
Be
It's just a
courteous.
kind gesture.
Yeah. Maybe it's old school
I don't know.
thinking. Maybe we're too far gone. I don't know.
Well, if it is old school, it shouldn't be.
I agree. 100%.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. So, no, I appreciate everything, Justin. It was wonderful to be here today. I really
I
appreciate it.
appreciate you and your time. Thank you, Bill.
Listen, though, I'd love people to check out our website, though. Come visit. Yeah, come visit us, Frontline Source Group. The website's the same as the name, so just frontlinesourcegroup.com. Or if you're on LinkedIn, follow us on our LinkedIn page. If you hear this and you're needing some help, reach out to me on LinkedIn, send me a message directly, tell me you heard me here, and I'll see if I can get you hooked up with somebody and help you guys out.
Thank you so much. I'll definitely put that down in the show notes. Appreciate your time again. Have a wonderful day,
100%.
Bill.
Thanks.